The global tariff war is no longer a looming threat. It is here, raging across continents, reshaping the balance of economic power in real time. Every headline, every market fluctuation, every diplomatic statement now carries consequences far beyond a single nation. Some countries are thriving, others are hemorrhaging wealth and influence. And the story of who is winning and who is losing tells us everything about the tectonic shifts in global power structures. Let's start with the BRICS bloc, the coalition of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, often referred to as the global majority. These nations have demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of escalating U.S. pressure. Take Brazil, for instance. Even after Washington slapped a staggering 50% tariff on Brazilian steel, the Brazilian economy did not crumble. Why? Because the economic foundation of the BRICS bloc has grown robust enough to absorb these shocks. Over the past decade, these countries strategically diversified their trade, invested in regional supply chains, and built financial buffers. The result is a bloc that can withstand American coercion in ways unimaginable just 15 years ago. China stands out as the most striking example of this foresight. It is also the central reason why Beijing wields enormous leverage against Donald Trump's America today. Consider the numbers. In 2006, at the height of the old globalist model, Chinese exports to the United States accounted for over 7% of China's GDP, a dangerously high dependency. Beijing recognized the inherent vulnerability and embarked on a deliberate, decades-long economic transformation. By 2025, exports to the U.S. have shrunk to just 2.8% of GDP. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a seismic strategic shift, a preemptive de-risking of the Chinese economy that makes it fundamentally resilient to U.S. sanctions or trade coercion. China's domestic growth story is equally compelling. Despite global turbulence, the economy is still projected to grow above 5% this year. Even in a scenario where the United States completely halts its imports from China, Beijing could maintain growth, thanks to a booming internal market and a web of alternative trade partners across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. In fact, indirect trade flows could even accelerate growth. Nations like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brazil could import Chinese goods and reroute them to the U.S., pocketing a margin along the way. China's economic architecture now transforms what was once dependency into leverage. Now, contrast that with Germany, the once unquestioned industrial titan of Europe. If there is a single economy in steep, frightening decline, it is Germany. This is a country that built its global reputation on engineering excellence, energy efficiency, and export dominance. Today, it faces a catastrophic reality. The industrial engine that fueled decades of prosperity is faltering. And unlike China, Germany did not prepare for a new multipolar world. The collapse can be traced back to 2022, when Berlin made a fateful geopolitical decision: sever ties to reliable, low-cost Russian natural gas. This move, framed as a geopolitical necessity, was in reality an industrial sledgehammer, striking the foundation of Germany's manufacturing economy. Chemical plants, automotive giants, and high-tech factories all relied on affordable energy to maintain global competitiveness. When the cheap fuel disappeared, costs soared, and production margins evaporated. Initially, German exports provided a lifeline, but today the lifeline is being cut. The United States has imposed a crippling 15% tariff on German goods, targeting the very cars, machinery, and industrial equipment that once defined Germany's economic prowess. The decline was not sudden, it was predictable, even inevitable. Germany's economy contracted by 0.3% this quarter, officially slipping back into recession. The contraction is not limited to abstract GDP figures. Industrial sectors that dominated global markets are now scrambling to survive. German chemical output, machinery exports, and automotive production are all under intense pressure, reminiscent of the worst days of the 2023 energy crisis. And this is not a temporary hiccup, it is structural. Germany now finds itself in a double squeeze: protectionist barriers from the U.S. on one side and a hyper-competitive China on the other. Washington is actively incentivizing domestic production to replace German exports, while Beijing's access to cheap energy, skilled labor, and integrated supply chains outcompetes Europe at every turn. Berlin's only apparent strategy is to pump unprecedented government spending into the economy: infrastructure projects, defense contracts, and industrial subsidies. But these measures are largely cosmetic, painkillers, not cures. Made in Germany is losing its symbolic weight. Even if the government spends billions, the underlying structural disadvantage, particularly in energy costs, remains unresolved. Mainstream economic forecasts cling to optimism, predicting marginal growth of 0.1% or 0.2% next year. But these numbers rely entirely on a single assumption: historic levels of deficit spending. Germany, the fiscal disciplinarian of Europe, has dismantled its constitutional debt brake, and deficits are projected to hit 3.3% of GDP this year, rising to 3.8% in the near future. Billions are allocated to railways and infrastructure, but these cannot offset the fundamental, systemic cost disadvantage in industrial production. And the EU's energy strategy adds insult to injury. In negotiations with the US, Europe agreed to purchase an estimated $750 billion in overpriced American LNG over 3 years, a logistical nightmare compared to nearby Russian pipelines. Gas must be liquefied in the US, shipped halfway across the world, and regasified in Europe, each step inflating costs. A small concession on tariffs does little to offset the permanent erosion of industrial competitiveness. Brussels knows this. Germany's suffering is only beginning. The crisis is not limited to Europe. The United States itself faces mounting challenges in maintaining industrial supremacy. Consider Boeing. Trump's flagship company has been frozen out of China's aviation market since 2017. Airbus has dominated, leaving Boeing in an unprecedented sales drought. Now, Boeing is pleading with Beijing for an order of 500 planes. Trump is intertwining trade negotiations with Boeing deals in an unusual, almost theatrical package. Desperation is evident. Washington is even contemplating a partial government takeover of Boeing, a direct attempt to emulate China's state-backed industrial model. But will China buy it? Beijing's long-term strategy is clear: self-sufficiency. COMAC, China's state-backed jet manufacturer, is ramping up production of the C919. In 2024, it delivered 48 jets. Production is set to double. Within a decade, the Boeing-Airbus duopoly could be obsolete. China is dangling the Boeing carrot as leverage, not generosity. Trump's base demands victories, but Beijing will only grant concessions in exchange for meaningful gains. Tariff reductions and technology relaxations. Concessions Trump cannot fully deliver without political risk. Meanwhile, South Korea is facing a more brutal reality. Trump has maneuvered Seoul into a position of near-total compliance. Despite ceremonial flattery in the Oval Office, Korea continues to face a 15% tariff on exports, the new ally rate. The strategy is simple but ruthless: relocate critical industries to U.S. soil. Plan A: tariffs to incentivize domestic production. Plan B: coercion, forcing allies to invest directly in U.S. industries. South Korea has pledged over $300 billion, with Samsung alone committing more than $100 billion to new Texas fabs, yet the tariffs remain, ensuring compliance. Seoul has little choice. Caught between a rising China and Trump's economic walls, key sectors like shipbuilding are now dominated by China, which controls over half of global orders. South Korea and Japan are effectively forced into submission. Korea has even begun issuing dollar-denominated bonds to support the U.S. dollar system, a clear sign of coercive alignment. And if the G7 is later compelled to purchase U.S. treasuries to finance Washington's deficit, it will be a continuation of this pattern. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. The new global order is harsh, binary, and unforgiving. China has strategically insulated itself. Germany is collapsing under structural weaknesses. Boeing is begging, and South Korea is submitting. The rules are clear: diversify, invest strategically, and build resilience, or face relentless pressure from the hyper-competitive giants shaping the 21st century. The question for every nation is the same: are you ready to play by these new rules, or will history write your collapse?